Buenas tardes a todos. Muchas gracias por
Good
participar.
morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being part of this webinar cycle. In this occasion, we're going to talk about how to convert an iOS or Android application into a super app. And Gaston Milano and Pablo Mazzillo will be the ones in charge of this webinar in particular. Before that, I'd like to tell you that we have simultaneous interpretation into English and Portuguese. For that, what you have to do is click on the interpretation icon below to select the language of your preference. And also at the end of the presentation, we always have a Q&A session. So for that, we're going to ask you to use the Q&A icon also in the bottom of your screens so that we can see them all together there. So without further ado, Pablo, the floor is yours. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. In this presentation that I will be giving together with Gaston, we will be telling you, as Anibal said, about everything that's new regarding super apps, which is what we've been working on lately. As an introduction, I'd like to tell you a bit about these super apps. I'm sure that many of you have heard about it recently. And this is something that came about in China, more precisely with two applications that nowadays well, they are the biggest examples of super apps, which are Alipay and WeChat. These apps initially were apps with a very specific purpose. WeChat was for messaging, what we have as WhatsApp here in Uruguay, for instance. And then they started adding some new functionalities to overcome everyday issues of the different users. And these functionalities, these new features became embedded in this application to a point in which it became open to third parties, incorporations of different services in the application. So back in 2018, they started referring to it as a super app. These mini apps or mini programs, anyone could develop them. They could develop a solution, and these solutions could be incorporated to this platform that was WeChat, which became a whole craze in China. There are 2 or 3 applications that are at the forefront of this, and then we have some others, but we're talking about applications that have millions of mini programs. Specifically, WeChat has nowadays more than 3 million mini programs, which of course hubs a community of millions of active users. And that became something that was more widespread throughout Asia. More applications became super apps as well. And nowadays, we are also hearing about it in the West. We're talking about different companies that are beginning to create their own super apps. When we started with Gaston and all the GeneXus team to work on this notion of super app more than 2 years ago, actually, before the pandemic, we saw that this was something that was beginning to get stronger and stronger in Asia. And we saw that with GeneXus, we had the possibility of providing this kind of solution. So we needed to be able to explain what it was about, what were the benefits that this entailed, both for organizations as well as for users. And it was a bit difficult, perhaps, to try to, explain how this was working in Asia and make it clear to the Western market. And nowadays, that has radically changed over the last couple of months. In the last year, and especially over the last couple of weeks, we've been having, contacts from different companies asking us about this super app technology, what GeneXus is working on, and how they could develop something with it to turn their applications into super apps. So we don't need to explain it anymore. They just reach us and they want to know about how things work. If I had to classify very generically these super apps, the ones that we see emerging in the West, and also compared to those initial super apps in China, I would classify them in 2 big types or groups. So we have these super apps that include the possibility of third parties developing mini programs and incorporate them to this platform with a very integrated services ecosystem, such as the case of WeChat, Baidu, Alipay. They are this kind of app. They're not just apps, but also they provide you with this platform so that you as a third party can integrate in the ecosystem. And also we have super apps that are emerging in Asia, but this is more the case of the West, of Western countries, they're more like an ecosystem where a number of applications coexist. For example, Line, which is another messaging application, we see that it's included, for example, Line Pay, Line Market, the same with Grab or Gojek, which are applications that initially had a more a very specific purpose, for example, such as the case of Pedidos Ya here in the region, like delivery services, but also money transfers, payments, shopping services, marketplace. And this is a way to open up those platforms to other players in the market by providing your own services, right? For example, with marketplace, anyone can work with that, but they need to use that service. So that application that they provide you with. So we can think of this as aggregators of services that are provided by the very same company. These are two very distinct cases. The proposal that we're offering with GeneXus to develop super apps looks more like the first group. It has some features of the second group, but it's more about the possibility of developing a super app, and those mini apps that will be embedded in the super app could be internally developed by the same organization or by third parties. So it would be the case of opening that platform so that you have an ecosystem where third parties and other developers or other businesses can incorporate their services to that super app, which targets a very particular market segment. And in this way, you would become a very a clear solution integrator. The content of this presentation, so that we know what the agenda is going to be about, we're going to be talking about super apps and mini apps under this umbrella of definitions of what we propose with GeneXus. What are the benefits? How does it work? And what it would be like to build a super app today using the GeneXus technology. There is a definition that, even though it's been around for more than 10 years, it's quite interesting by Lazarides, which is he was the founder of BlackBerry, and he introduced the concept of super app that said that it was a closed ecosystem of many apps that overcome problematics that users come across on a daily basis. And by offering these ecosystems of applications, they offer an integrated, contextualized, and efficient experience. So this definition is exactly the concept of what we are trying to it defines exactly what we're offering as a solution of super apps in GeneXus. But what is a super app? It's a native app. It's a mobile app that allows users to solve many problems, which may be related to everyday issues, access to services, a payment, making a purchase in a shop, paying for a ticket, doing some paperwork, services that you require on a daily basis as a user. And you can do all of this through one entry point, through one application. And for each of these services, you will have a mini app that will overcome that issue, that obstacle, and it will be specific for that. And the advantage of this solution is that these mini apps will be dynamically loaded depending on the user's request, or what they need, or when they need to have access to that service. So these are not applications that will be installed in your phone that you need to download in advance from a store, but rather that they will be dynamically loaded from the super app. The moment that a user needs to use them, they will be operational. And when they're not used, they will just not be taken up in a space. So a mini app is a small application that solves a specific problem within a super app. And it's not just a matter of a technical restriction, because today, if you're talking about applications that are dynamically loaded, you cannot have a huge application because it needs to be dynamically loaded. So the restriction is not only from the technical standpoint, but also the idea, in order to improve the user experience, is that these mini apps need to be very specific, very targeted, where the user can do whatever they want to do, hire that service in a very straightforward way without having to learn how to operate the platform or the application. That mini app eventually, or very likely, will have access to different services of the super app, which is what's adding that value, because there is something in that super app that's going to be solving your problem in a much more simple and straightforward way. So you're minimizing the friction of users and applications. And as we said, it's going to be dynamically loaded according to the user's request, or depending on where the user is located. That's, for example, where contextualization comes into play. Depending on where they are, or what they're doing, or their profile, dynamically, they will have access to different mini apps. So what are some of the key benefits? We classify them according to the three main roles that intervene in a solution of this kind. You have the end user, then you have the super app owner, and the mini app owner. For the user, as we said, the biggest benefit is definitely instant access to services that are contextualized, right? That they are specific for that user. So many apps or the services that you will be seeing from that super app may be very different from the ones that Gaton is seeing, depending on his user's profile or his location or a number of reasons. So it will vary depending on that context. And access is instantaneous. So the big advantage here is that the user doesn't need to go to a store to download that application, but rather that it's going to be dynamically loaded from the super app. It implies less frictions because users don't have to download applications for different services, but also you don't need to register for each application, which is what you have to do nowadays. If you don't use this, you need to, for example, enter your payment details. Sometimes you need to fill in a form. So in each app that you use today, you need to register that. And that wouldn't be necessary in this case because the super app has that information. You do it once, and many apps will be using that information, for example, to make a payment through the super app. And all the security and the privacy is concentrated in the super app. It means that you don't have to register, and therefore you will be minimizing the number of times that you're using sensitive information, right? For the super app owner, it's about how you provide more services to your community and better services to your community through partners. Now, as a super app owner, you may be adding more services to your users, but also you will be opening up to the possibility of other partners developing those services and integrating with you within your super app. And it allows you to have an incremental business development. So you can add more and more features, and these features could even be, as we said before, contextualized. So depending on the group of users, some people may see one thing, while some people may see another. And that's a great advantage for those that develop apps, especially considering that all the services will be provided by the same corporation. So this makes this incremental development. And for mini app owners, now thinking about third parties that could be adding mini apps to that super app, it's yet another channel where you can offer your solution to an ecosystem that has already been built. You have a super app that, let's say, has a number of users that are using that application already. So you create this mini app that offers a certain service, maybe that offers a web solution, or maybe a solution that is also in the different stores like Google Play or Apple Store. And now you want to include that as a mini app as part of that channel because you believe that that is a channel that has a user segment that you find appealing, and you want to be covering that segment. So that would be a mini app running within a super app. It also simplifies integration because it is, part of the super app. So now we're talking about all the aspects that are really important to an application, but that do not make up the core of the application, such as, for example, the admin stuff, data management, payment, details and means of payment. So all of that will be given to you by the super app, and you don't have to work on that. You don't have to worry about it. A clear example would be, for example, the coronavirus application. When we developed that for the Uruguayan government, we had to consider all the security aspects, users' access. And if back then we had a government super app where we could just integrate the coronavirus application as a mini app, we needn't have worried about all that stuff. And then, of course, productivity, because as you will see later on, it's a GeneXus development. You'll be using GeneXus as a development tool. We know how to generate these solutions that are dynamically loaded. And the development is just like any other mobile solution, with all the advantages that the platform can provide you with. So some scenarios just to give you an overview of what I've been doing. A classic example is the case of financial or banking applications, because they already have a community of users that has already been established, and it's a large community. It's a clear channel where you want to increase the services that you want to provide your users with. So a super app fits perfectly in this. Imagine that this is the first bank application, which is an app that we use for demos. This app allows you to make wire transfers, to register payments, to exchange currency, on top of all the traditional services, all the traditional financial services. This applications that nowadays offers benefits to the users, such as, for example, when they want to buy tickets or when they want to have a discount at a certain shop by using their credit card. All those benefits, instead of just being a list, they could be introduced to us as mini apps. So when the user selects one of those mini apps, it would be loading dynamically that application to, for example, buy some ice cream or get a coffee. They will have their own graphic identity that is aligned with the aesthetics of that shop or that business, but everything will be delegated for the super app to make that payment, and it will inform the mini app about the result of that operation, of that transaction. Another clear scenario is the case of the government. For example, in Uruguay, we could have an application for the Uruguayan government, and on top of the typical information that you have in this kind of application, you could have other mini apps with new features and services for the user. Just to give you an example, here in Uruguay, every year we have what we call Heritage Day, which is a weekend, a day or two in a year, where all the public offices and public buildings and museums are open to the public for free, for Uruguayans to visit the country's heritage. And that's a list of numbers that have opening times, opening hours, and that could be perfectly well a mini app that is visible over that weekend, because it doesn't make sense to have it up and running during the rest of the year. But well, this mini app gives you the chance to just be on display maybe for a week or a couple of weeks before that event, which is when it becomes relevant. And once that is over, then it just disappears. Another example, for example, when you have to do some paperwork, such as renew your passport or maybe your ID, that could trigger a mini app that when you tap on it, it takes you directly to an app where you request the kind of paperwork that the user wants to do. It may ask you some very specific details for that event in particular. For example, the date when you want to, I don't know, renew your ID. And when you have to make a payment, that action is delegated to the super app because it already has that information about you, and it keeps that information. You select the means of payments that you want to use. And once that is done, it will inform the mini app about the results. And so the user will finish that process. It will close the mini app. And otherwise, unless they want to see it again, it will be not there bothering the user. In Globant, for example, we have a solution. There is a solution that is Start Me Up, which is an internal network for all the collaborators of the company worldwide. And they also have applications for everyone that works for the company that is traveling, for example, to enter the travel expenses. They also have a section that gives you the benefits for users and for workers. Well, these could be mini apps, right? We could see it as you see on top, with like a gallery with the different options. And, again, these are all independent applications that run within the super app. None of these applications are applications that you will find in the store. They are just dynamically loaded from that super app. The other example that we wanted to show you was an app that was developed last week for a Globant event that was called Tech and Fest that took place in Medellin, Colombia. And we wanted to create an app to show the different speakers and the timetables and so on. But then GeneXus was participating in that event. We had a stand at the event, and we wanted to offer all the people that had physically attended that event the possibility of registering for a lottery. So a lot of people were following the event online, but for those that had attended the event in person, well, we wanted to give them access to this lottery. So what we did was we created a super app. We had a QR code so that users could scan that QR code from the GeneXus stand at the event, and it would automatically load a mini app within the application, which when we installed the application, it was not there. You couldn't see it. It only appeared when a person scanned the QR code that was in the stand. So when you scanned it, it took you to another application where you could register for this lottery. So as you see, this is another scenario where you see how versatile many apps and super apps can be. So now we're going to talk about what it would look like if you want to build a super app with the GeneXus technology, which is what we're working on at the moment. There are three key components in a super app solution. First of all, the development of the super app itself. This could be from scratch. With GeneXus, you can have the possibility of developing a super app from scratch.
Desarrollo de la super app, en el cual estamos trabajando fuertemente
And
ya
the
con
other scenario, and we're working a lot on this with some partners, is the possibility of converting any native app that was not necessarily developed with GeneXus into a super app. The other component is, of course, mini app development, because what makes sense with super apps is that you have these mini apps. And then the mini app center, which is the point that connects both sides, right? You have a super app, but where are you going to get the mini apps from? Well, they will be cataloged in what you call a mini app center that has a full security scheme with users, because users that are developing mini apps, they will say, okay, if you want to be a part of that super app, you will have to register, and it will be part of the catalog, and it will be part of the server, and the super app owner will approve this mini app because it has the minimum requirements to operate within the super app. And once that is done, it will be up and running. And all of this process happens within this mini app center. Here we see the three components that I was telling you about. On the left, you have the super app that could be developed with GeneXus, or if it is a native Android or Apple or iOS application, you can turn it into a super app with what we call GeneXus Render, which is a component already available on GitHub. You can download it, install it in your projects, and it will automatically convert that app that, chances are it already has a high adoption level. So you don't want to create a whole new application. You want to make good use. You want to leverage that application that has, you want to leverage the number of users that application has, and you want to transform it and make it into a super app. So with this render library, you can do that automatically because it will give you the possibility of dynamically loading it in the mini app center. So that will have an API to communicate with the provisioning server. That will give you a list of all the mini apps that will be available for that super app specifically. And then in terms of development, when you are developing this super app, the other thing that you will need to do is to define and implement the API services. So the entry points through which that app will communicate, the mini apps will communicate with the super app. A clear example is, for example, the ID step, or whenever the user wants to make a payment, there will be a call through that API to the super app so that they can execute the payment. And this should be developed by the person that is implementing, of course, the super app solution. On the mini app side, as we said, the development is with GeneXus. It's just like the development of any other native mobile application. You don't need to learn anything new. There will be some integration points, such as the communication with the super apps API, if it is necessary or a requirement. That is what we could say it's new. And then, of course, all the, you need to publish it in the mini app center. So the mini apps generated by GeneXus does not need to compile the mini app for Android or iOS. So the metadata that we already have is what will be published in the mini app center, which will be rendered by the super app. And that will be then subject to the review and approval process by the super app owner. And in runtime, what we will see is that the super app will connect to the provisioning to have that list of mini apps. And when the user selects one of these mini apps, then it is dynamically loaded. In that moment, you'll be working with that mini app with their own backend service. I mean, the deployment is just like any other mobile solution, but the only difference is that it doesn't need to go directly to the store. It's loaded from the super app. Now, delving into this notion of how to transform this existing application that was not developed with GeneXus into a super app, we have everything documented on GitHub. The steps that you need to follow are, first, you import the GeneXus render module, which is the one that will transform this application into a super app. That will be the one responsible for the dynamic loading. That is available both for Android and Apple. Then you need to get the mini apps, which is an API that will connect, as I said, to the mini app center to get that list. You need to design the UX for discovery of those mini apps, so how they will be presented, the format, and we provide you with some resources that can come in handy for this. But those of you that develop super apps will need to know how to, present those different mini apps, and then also how to provide a communication interface with the mini apps. You need to implement those services, and you need to export the interface so that those that develop mini apps can communicate and have those entry points and contact points with the super app. As I said, all of this documentation to convert a native application is already available on the wiki. And what is the super app status today? So today, related to the super app development side of things, it will be in beta soon. Yeah, so you'll have the possibility of creating a whole super app solution with GeneXus. This is a closed beta process at the moment. It will be open in the next couple of days because in GX 18, and that version will be releasing in the first version of this technology. And basically nowadays you have the possibility of converting any native application into a super app. As we said before, we've been working with some partners for this closed beta project. GeneXus 18 will be released for everyone in October. And then, mini app development, which is already in the beta phase, and it will be released again with GeneXus 18. And the mini app center, which, as I said, is the mini app administrator. We're going to provide an SAS or a SaaS solution. And we have everything defined with the infrastructure and code so that it can be implemented in any organization as an on-premise solution, which will also be available with GeneXus 18. As I told you before, we've been working with some partners on these solutions, and we're hoping to have this, to have some news in the next couple of weeks about this project. Today, it's still closed beta, but those of you that have some specific questions or needs, or maybe you've had some requirements to develop a solution of this kind, please do let us know. That's the link. So you can find more information about all this topic, and also a form if you feel like reaching out to us. And maybe we can work on a solution together to get your development started as soon as possible. And then on the 11th of October, which is going to be the launching of GeneXus 18, we're going to be delving into all these issues and telling you a bit more about what's new and what we've been working on regarding this issue. So that is, broadly speaking, what we wanted to tell you about this. I would love to start the Q&A session with Gaston so that you can ask us any questions that you may have. Thank you, Pablo. Okay, so the Q&A session is open. We have a couple on the chat. A couple were answered by Gaston, but we're also going to make them public for everyone else so that you will have the same answers. We have William Avanto, who is raising his hand. So the floor is yours, William. William, did you have a question?
Bueno. Mientras William se prepara, vamos con algunas de las preguntas que tenemos por acá.
Okay, so while we wait for William, let's answer some of these questions. Andres Pantorini was asking us, the Play Store to upload the mini apps is also by GeneXus, or could you upload it to an Android or Apple Play Store? Well, the mini app center, which it would be the Play Store, is by GeneXus, so you need to load it there. You need to upload it to that mini app center, which is the one that will know for which super apps that mini app will be available. It doesn't mean that if you have developed a mobile solution, independently of whether it's behaving as an app, it can also behave as a mini app, and it could be part of the traditional stores. That could be the case. Sometimes you develop an app that is already available in the different stores, but you want to have a mini app version for it to run within an ecosystem as part of super app, and that is completely doable. Okay, we have Geraldo Escobar. He says, good afternoon. Is this going to be available with the same SD generator, or is it going to be a different generator with an independent license? Okay, we are trying to define that, the license. When we release the beta for everyone, we're going to be telling you about the specifics about the licensing of this technology. Perfect. Elias Luis is asking us, is the beta already available to be tried for a trial mode? Not at the moment. Once it's in beta, maybe you will have it in trial. I don't think there would be any restrictions. I don't know what you think about this, Gaston. No, totally, yeah. It could happen, but probably not in the first betas. Great. We have Douglas Oliveira asking us, I already have an important need for this resource. It makes a lot of sense. Congratulations for everyone. Excellent resource. So some congrats on Douglas' side. Hey, Douglas, how are you? Great to see you there. Yeah, definitely. Do let me know if you need something and we can talk about it. Great. Leonel Peña, he said, how would you manage all the databases? Okay, I'm not sure I understood the question, but as I said, the mini app is an independent app that has its own backend service and its own database. These are like independent applications in that sense, and then they run within the context of a super app. So they will have some integration points with the super app, but it could be a totally independent application with its own database. Robert Sinibaldi is asking us, will the mini app store have a cost? Yeah, well, the definition, the thing is that we will be telling you about the licensing soon. Salvador Vargas said, these mini apps are installed in the device when they are called from the super app. Hey, Salvador, mini apps, what they do is they are dynamically loaded. That means that that you're downloading the metadata of that mini app with all the information of all the structure, and it's rendered as a native app. So in other words, it's using the base technology for that today of how you render a mobile application developed with GeneXus. But you don't install it per se. It's something that is absolutely dynamic. Great. I have Juanjo. Juanjo, you're raising your hand. Would you like to ask a question out loud? Okay, let's. Hey, okay, no, never mind. Let's keep going. Flavio, he said, how will mini apps work online and offline? Is it possible to have like both solutions? Hey, Flavio, no, well, mini apps, because of the architecture of this kind of solution, it's an online app. So you can't have offline applications because they will be rendered dynamically, and so you need to be online. Nate is asking us, will you have a testing environment for super apps and the corresponding mini apps? Hey, Nate, yes, we will be offering that testing environment so that you can load some mini apps for trial and testing. Yeah.
Yo ahora.
Dale, adelante,
Right.
Juanjo.
Okay, now I can, yeah. Now my mic is working. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So the question that I wanted to ask you was whether you could create a mini app with a multi-platform development, such as React Native, that will then compile for Android and iOS. Could you use that technology or not for super apps? Hey, yeah, okay. React Native ends up compiling native Android and iOS. We haven't, we don't have a library for React Native wrappers for iOS libraries and Android libraries that we are distributing. So all the cases that we have worked on so far is native, but it doesn't rule out the possibility of us having a simple integration wrapper with React Native or other frameworks that are cross-platform. But for the time being, it wouldn't be a priority for us.
Okay, gracias.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Okay, we have one from M&M. That says, in terms of security, if a user is authenticated with GAM in the super app, how does the mini app know if they are authenticated? Okay, so what you do in there are many things that you can do, but what super apps need to do is to define what they need to define the API, as Pablo said, of the services that will be exposed to that it will expose to the different mini apps. So you will have a design protocol between the mini apps and the super app, through which mini apps will not have to know whether or not someone is logged, but they should just call a service in the super app that will be the one that ultimately will do the login. And if the user is not logged in, then it will show the login interface of the super app, and then they will be able to continue or not. If they want to have an interface that is server to server to consume the API, but on the server side, not on the client side, in the native application, then they may need to have a common identity provider or something of the likes. But otherwise, you will need to define the communication protocol between mini apps and super apps through the API service that will be defined by the super app host. So we will be writing down all the different integration options and mechanisms, but in a nutshell, the super app creator does not necessarily need to use GAM. If that doesn't happen, then the most common thing, if it is a third-party developed application, what you need to do is define the communication protocol with the different mini apps. So that's the only way. But if both mini apps and super app are using GeneXus technology and they have an agreement to use an identity provider, then it will be practically built in the communication. But yeah, you need to take a look at the specific case. Great. Edmar Martelato, she says, congratulations, Pablo. In my case, it's a selling CRM application, and I understand that it would be a great opportunity to use this new resource. So, well, no question, just a very positive comment. Alfonso Nuremberg Jr., he said, good afternoon. Should mini apps be developed in GeneXus, or can you integrate mini apps that have been developed with other languages? Hey, Alfonso, how are you? Well, the solution that we are offering nowadays is that mini apps need to be developed with GeneXus, because you can make them through the mini app generator for them to be, then loaded from the super app. Nowadays, it's GeneXus, the one that provides you with the mini app solution. Maybe the super app is not GeneXus, but the mini app must be GeneXus. Mauro Vasconcelos says, I don't know anything about GeneXus from a technical point of view. How can I, dip my toes into this low-code world? It would be really interesting. And Mauro, we can send you some information by mail, so you will have it in your inbox, okay? Next question. Diego Pereira, how do these integration points work? Hey, Diego. I think you're talking about the integration between the mini app and the super app. As we said, it's an API that will be implemented by the mini app, and then what it does is it defines in GeneXus. Well, you have an external object that has the interface of those services. So if you develop the mini app, you will have that interface so that in runtime you can explain how that communication will take place. So when you're developing the mini app, you will have the interface exposed by the super app. It will make the corresponding call, and then in runtime those calls will be picked by the super app because it's being run by within the context of that super app. But all of that is documented in GitHub. Okay, so basically, if you're an iOS programmer, you define a given interface that has 3 methods with some parameters, and you do the native implementation on iOS or Android or whatever, and then they will provide mini app developers with an interface through an external object that mini apps users will use. Yeah, so that is when you have the process of turning the native application into a super app. Yeah, it's quite straightforward. Edmar, he says it would be interesting to have this resource also available for web. Yeah, just to comment, that's true, absolutely. And maybe we can also take advantage of this question by Luis that says, can Angular applications be mini apps? So yeah, absolutely. Nowadays, that is only for native applications. That is where we have today the biggest value. Because if you think about web applications trying to dynamically load a website, it's, rocket science. It's quite easy and quite straightforward. So if you want to have something that catalogs URLs and load it as a component, it's not, well, it's quite similar to having a portal or what portals do nowadays. So even though it is something that we may want to do, it's not something where you will have a breakthrough technology that could be a huge differential from the rest of the competition. However, what nobody has nowadays in the world is a native application render, which is what today GeneXus provides you with through this kind of super app solution. But it's clear that the model and the conceptualization of what a super app and a mini app is perfectly could apply to web applications. I think that in that sense, you have some alternatives that you can, do today without having to wait for any new technology to come along. Great. Next, Hernan Alejandro Sarria, he said, if I have a mobile application in GeneXus that is already up and running, will it be easy to move that into a super app? Hey, Hernan, yeah, it's going to be very easy because you have all the integration side that we already discussed, importing the render and the library. If it's GeneXus, it's going to be very easy to do that. Okay, we have another question that circles back on this GAM issue. What would be the case of the use of GAM in a mini app? Yeah, that's what Gaton said, right? But yeah, let me just take advantage of this to add one more thing. In general, we're waiting for the identity part to be resolved by the super app and not mini apps, because otherwise we would just be in the same place. If you're going to have to log in every time that you use a mini app, then it would be pointless. So the idea is that you will get to this point where you can have good integration for identity issues through the super app from the mini apps, right? Yeah, you need to understand that mini apps are being loaded within the super app. It's not an external application that's being opened. Imagine that you're in an e-wallet and you want to buy some coffee, And in that e-wallet, you have this Face ID integration. You logged in everything, and you just go there and you buy a cup of coffee. You don't need to log in again. Then if you want to go to the theme park and buy some tickets for some rides, you could also buy that from there. Because the identity is already given. What you need to do is, well, maybe the super app will send the mini app a token so that eventually they could keep this transactional relationship, but it would be a safe environment guaranteed by the super app. Excellent. We have Silvia Avila that is asking us if we could give some examples of mini apps and super apps. Well, in the presentation, Silvia, we showed a couple of scenarios. We could be talking about, for example, banking applications, or maybe government applications, or any application that you would like to have different functionalities. And we will be showing a bit more specific cases very soon, on top of the one that we used in the Medellin event, in the Tech and Fest in Colombia, and also that case of the well, that was the case of the Global solution for global collaborators. Okay, we have a question from Bruno Camara. He says, good afternoon. Can you download a mini app by proximity? So, for example, you're working through a foot square or in a shopping mall, and you get a mini app when you get close to a specific shop. If that were the case, how would you get that notification? GPS, Bluetooth? Is this going to be available in the early stages? Yes, that's a functionality. That's a feature that the super app should offer. If it has a mini app, then it should be perfectly able to download mini apps by proximity. So those mini apps that are cataloged for a super app, they should be able to access your location, and depending on proximity, you could automatically obtain that mini app, and it will be it would be shown to the user. Yeah, just one thing, because of the example that you gave, Bruno. If you're in for example, in a market, and you want to have that in each place, what they have done in China is, instead of having a QR code in each stand, let's say, you get an app for the whole market when you're there, because the GPS is not going to be precise enough for it to know exactly in what stand or what shop you are. So normally what they do is they have a QR code that you don't have that in a certain stand in a market or in a certain shop in a mall, for example. But they have one general QR code where you also, have access to all the different shops and stands. So you have access to all the different shops. You scan, you make a payment from there, and you just go to the pickup center and get whatever you bought, right? So this is how they've pragmatically overcome this issue in China. So they have a QR code. You just scan it, and that is the mini app that you use. Very good. They're asking us how this will be commercialized, how this generator will be commercialized, if it's going to be different. Well, yeah, we will be telling you about that soon. Rodrigo Capdevila, he is asking us a couple of questions. First, he congratulated you guys on the presentation, and then he said, from the mini app center, will you only have the metadata available? Is it possible to control or to know what each mini app is running? Do you have the possibility of generating a mini app with its metadata, and then in the back end, after it's approved, you need to get a clearance from the mini app? What would the flow look like for the evolution of mini apps? Does it mean that something needs to change in the super app? Or, as you see, a lot of questions. Yeah, great questions. The mini app center has a versioning mechanism that is quite similar to what happens when you publish in a store. You're going to publish a version of your mini app for a certain version of a super app, and that mini app will be basically registering metadata, but it will also have access to some additional resources. But the important thing here is the metadata, and that metadata is signed with a key that belongs to that super app, and there is a versioning mechanism. So, for example, if you change something in the backend or the URL, you will have to publish that version, and it needs to be approved because the super app owner is going to have in charge of the revision stage. They need to approve it, and once everything is approved, only then will it be available for users. If you have some changes, you need to change the version, and it should go through the same process again. It's the same as what happens when you publish something in the store. We didn't want to really reinvent the wheel, so it's basically going to be the same. And well, the last question by Lionel Pay, he says, will this not affect the approval process of App Store and Google Play? No, it doesn't. We've had zero inconveniences with that, so it shouldn't change anything. As a matter of fact, we have the KBN, which is an application that we started with the mobile development of solutions with GeneXus. It's an application that basically works with the dynamically loading of applications, and that is in the store, and it works fine. Yeah, just one more thing. First, amazing questions, and this last question in particular was really good. Of course, when you request an approval for an application from the store, if, for example, the Tech and Fest is approved in the store, right? And we said, okay, we don't say it's going to be loading this mini app. We say it's a lottery application because we're not infringing any Apple Store, regulation. All the code that is running has already been submitted to the store. So the only thing that you need to do when you seek this approval is to say what the features and the functionalities of the app will be, and just stick to that. If then you're loading something that was not in the requirements, then you will have an issue, which already be, the case if you just hide some functionalities nowadays, if you publish an application in the store. So you need to be clear about this. It is, again, a native application, but it's just implemented in a different, new way. You're not downloading code. What you have is a native render that is integrated and that has already been submitted for approval. So it's what Pablo said, right? The cases that we have had so far have had zero issues. And we're, well, if something becomes really platform-like, then we should be talking about something different. But WeChat and Alibaba, these are all applications that are approved in the stores. So everything is legal, nothing is illegal. Okay, great. Okay. We have another question about Edmar. So we're going to be talking about the licensing very soon. Then in China, where do they upload the mini apps? Well, each platform, like Alipay, for example, they have their own store, which is analogous to that mini app center. It's a store where you have the different mini apps. But the mini app center that we are offering is multi super app. They have their own for that super app exclusively. Luis is asking us, mini apps will remain in the device after the running, or is it erased? Well, you have a cache mechanism that is implemented. They have to, they will remain there because of the cache, depending on the time that was defined by the super app owner, but then they are deleted. It's a cleaning mechanism that each device has that basically stores that metadata in those places, but whenever you need some extra space, it is automatically deleted. But there is a cache mechanism implemented to have it up and running, because if it's something that you use systematically, the second time that you use it, it will be loaded much faster. We've had zero issues in the sense with what we've done so far. They load super fast, but yeah, you have a cache mechanism. And yeah, eventually they are deleted. Fantastic. Then Alan is asking us, have you considered the Huawei App Store? Yeah, I mean, not particularly. I think that we're not using anything that is specific for this technology of Google Play services. So they could be perfectly deployed. I mean, you could perfectly deploy any super app in the Huawei store. Okay, great, fantastic. Douglas said congrats, and he says that it was an amazing presentation. Thank you, Douglas. Thank you so much for your kind regards and congrats. So we have no further questions. If you have any comments to wrap up. No, just I would like to thank everyone. Thank you, Pablo, for that amazing presentation that you gave us. We will be doing the release of this technology with GeneXus 18, so stay tuned, and we would like to invite you to that live event that we will have on the 11th of October. We are open to any comments or questions that you may have about this presentation, and if you have any particular cases as you begin to use it, it's something that we are being at the forefront as a community in GeneXus, because we have a technology that those that have already developed applications with GeneXus, whether it's mobile or maybe are thinking about using some of the smart devices generators for this, they have a competitive edge compared to the rest of the world. We're talking about, a lot of people are talking about super apps, but not so many people are talking about mini apps. And when they talk about super apps, they are usually talking about in-house developments that need to be coupled. And here we're offering that as an advantage, because you can just offer solutions, super app solutions with a mini apps line that is included. So thank you for joining this presentation, and we will be seeing you soon in the next webinar. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gaston. Thanks to you all for being part of this webinar. Remember that this webinar will be uploaded on our website, genexus.com/webinars. You will see, you will have available this webinars recording and all the upcoming webinars, as well as the schedule for the next webinars that are coming up. And don't forget that invitation that Gaston made for the event on the 11th of October. See you. Thank you.